Hi, I'm Samantha Phipps, Executive Director of the Family Violence Coalition here in Burnsville, North Carolina. We're in Yancey County. We're 45 minutes northeast of Asheville. We're a small rural county, a lot of land space, but short on general population. We have about 18,000 people in the whole county. And our agency is the Family Violence Coalition of Yancey County. We were incorporated in 1995 and have been providing domestic violence services to this county since that time. In 2003, we became certified in offering rape crisis services, sexual assault services, and we are certified by the North Carolina Council for Women as being the only entity that can offer domestic violence and sexual assault, rape crisis types of services. Standing now in our thrift store, the Crazy Daisy Thrift Boutique, and it's located at 7 Town Square. The administrative offices for the Family Violence Coalition are located in this building. That way I can meet and greet with the general public, have meetings, and people don't have to go to our shelter to meet with me. We also offer support group services for people who are in shelter, out of shelter. We offer other types of wraparound services, including legal advocacy, medical advocacy. We have a 24-hour hotline, crisis line. We're staffed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at our shelter. As I say, violence takes no holidays. And the administrative offices are open every day, Monday through Friday, 8:30 until 5. Our thrift store is pretty much open those same hours, and Saturday open 10 a.m. until 3 p.m.
I took her to the place where she grew up, a house full of memories with lots of love. She wasn't who she thought she'd be, the pain and sorrow was all she could see. He was determined not to let her go, but with a strong will, she made it home. Well, don't be afraid to take the first step. There's shelters, family, and friends to help. Life's too short to live in fear. Don't let him take away those precious years. He'll try his best to convince you to stay, but sooner or later you gotta walk away.
I thought I would read our mission statement so everyone will be familiar with what our mission is: to provide direct service and support to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, educate victims about choices, options they have, and educate the community on the causes of domestic violence, sexual assault, as well as the barriers that victims face to prevent the cycle of violence from continuing. So not only do we react to something when it happens, some violence where people come into shelter to be protected and help break cycles that way, by breaking the cycles of violence, we also try to prevent violence from happening in the first place through our community education efforts, going into the schools, visiting your church, visiting your agency. We will meet with you one-on-one if there's anything you want to talk about regarding domestic violence, sexual assault. And so we try to break cycles of violence when people are young before they start having families of their own, to make appropriate choices in dating and look for signs of violence. We also work directly with DSS and Child Protective Services, knowing that people learn how to be violent when they're children. It's a learned behavior. We can unlearn those behaviors, or preferably not be taught how to be violent in the first place. We offer our services not only to people who stay at our shelter, but we get referrals from other agencies to work with people in support group, peer-based one-on-one counseling, referral services. We will meet with you at the courthouse to help with the 50B order. We'll meet with you at the emergency room if you've been brought in because of violence or sexual assault. And we'll give you our phone number at the end of the video. But we are open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whenever you need us, you can call our crisis line. And you will talk with a trained employee who is trained in both domestic violence and sexual assault at any time of the day or night. We are starting a new group sometime in January or February where it's going to be a domestic violence education group for men who are maybe sent to us through the court system or through DSS and Child Protective Services to help reunite their families. Or you can just voluntarily come to it. We'll be giving you more information about that in the community as soon as those services are available. And we also hope to start a group or meet with people one-on-one if you are a survivor of childhood abuse, whether it's childhood sexual abuse or some form of physical abuse. We will be working with people in dealing with those issues and then making appropriate referrals as needed to a counselor if we feel like that you need a mental health referral.
The pain lives on in the world today, in their broken hearts and their evil ways. You can hear it in her voice as she cries through her busted lip and her blackened eyes. Don't be afraid to take the first step. There's shelters, family, and friends to help. Life's too short to live in fear. Don't let him take away those precious years. He'll try his best to convince you to stay, but sometimes you gotta put a stop to it.
I know every private nonprofit now is having some issues in the state of North Carolina, probably all over the United States. A lot of the smaller private nonprofits are challenged for funding. We are no exception. We are primarily funded by state of North Carolina grants that are earmarked for domestic violence sexual assault programs. And in the past 2 fiscal years, our fiscal year starts July 1st of any given year. Starting fiscal year 2011-2012, we faced a $20,000 cut in funding. It was federal funds that came into the state. All of our emergency services monies, TANF-DV monies, were cut. We went from $15,000 to $13,000 to $0. And I'm still facing that $13,000 cut in TANF-DV funds. We also had another grant that was cut, our DSS FISPA grant, was cut by $6,400 based on population size of Yancey County compared to other counties. They were going to start dividing their monies up a different way. So through no fault of our own, we still met with all the right certifications. We were cut by $20,000. So we've turned to our community more and more for donations, unrestricted funds. All of the grant funds that come into this agency are what they call restricted funds. I can only use them for certain services, and with each one of those grants has their own budget, and they build into our overall budget. What we desperately need is a cushion of funds because our funding comes in quarterly. Our fiscal year starts July 1. We may not start getting a quarterly installment of funds from the state of North Carolina until mid-October, sometime 1st of November, and we need a cushion of funds in our bank account because we have to keep paying everyone to keep the doors open. We have to pay our electricity, sets of insurances, our FICA, North Carolina revenue, everything that other businesses have to pay, we do also. And so we really do need a cushion of funds in the bank as bridge funds while we're waiting on our funding to come in from the state. Also, some of our grants are what they call reimbursement grants, where we spend the money and then we do a cost report to ask for our money back from the state of North Carolina. So we are several times a year really strapped for cash flow. And so it is a difficult enough job working in domestic violence and sexual assault. It's very stressful, but it's even more stressful when you're having to figure out how are we bringing in funding to this agency. Our community has rallied around us over the past year, really rallied around us more to support us with unrestricted funds and donations, but we're going to continue to need that support. We're going to keep the community informed as we learn different changes that the state of North Carolina or the federal government might be making with with funding programs like ours. But we definitely want to keep our shelter local. We want to keep our program services local. And we will keep our community informed every step of the way as we learn what's happening in Raleigh or through the federal government in funding our programs. For every dollar that you donate to an agency like ours, for every dollar that is given to us through the state of North Carolina or the federal government, there have been some cost analysis studies done on programs, just domestic violence programs, in the state of Kentucky and also the state of Arizona. They did some studies and found that for every dollar invested by the state or the feds, the state saved ultimately anywhere from $6 or $7 per dollar, or $20, all the way up to $20. So, in other words, if someone donates $1,000, you could be saving your state $6,000 or $20,000, depending on how we use our funding. And people get a lot of services from an agency like ours for a limited amount of money. And to keep our whole program open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it runs about $800 a day. And that is a far cry from what some other programs cost to keep people alive and prevent violence from happening. So we do appreciate your support. We're going to continue to need it, and we're willing to come and talk to you or your group or your church at any time to explain what we do and how your dollars that are invested in breaking cycles of violence ultimately affect society. Another thing that I always say when I'm writing back to the state, when they say, is there anything else you want to add? I always ask, what value do we place on one human life? And I know we have to come up with numbers to justify our existence, but I had a lady who came to me one day who had just escaped had escaped with her life. And her daughter had come home from school and brought her some literature about the Family Violence Coalition, and I had a little lady that came to my office door crying hysterically, and I took her up to the shelter after I'd calmed her down, and we talked for another 2 hours. And I got ready to leave, and she gave me a hug, and she said, Miss Samantha, I know that you're busy, and I know that I took you away from some work in your office, but if you just save one of us, it's worth it, isn't it? And I broke down and cried and gave her a hug, because that's exactly why we're here. It's about saving human lives, and what value do we place on one human life? And a rural life in these western North Carolina mountains is worth just as much as any urban life in a big city. And that's what we're going to keep reminding people, that we need to be here, we need to save lives out here in the middle of Yancey County.
Since 1831, and Frankie was a loving wife and mother until Charlie done her wrong. And no one knows what happened on that cold December night. It said Charlie came home drinking and threatened his family's life. So when